to the First World War. Today's agenda is to cover the road to the First World War. Then we have to discuss the First World War, causes, how it happened, and consequences. And this week, as you already know, that tomorrow, which is Thursday, we'll cover Russian Revolution and ideologies. Thereafter, on Friday, we'll talk about the road to the Second World War, which is basically Great Depression and fascism. And thereafter, remember that this Saturday you have class. I'm telling you something. Great. Costa, great. I'll tell you that. The connection is that the Young Italy movement inspired the name and the literature of Mazzini was being read. So, this Saturday, the date is 4th. You have a class with me. This is going to be a regular session. We will discuss World War II basically here. Tuesday, which is 7th November, is basically your doubt session, which is my last session. Your doubt session is basically Tuesday. So because there was a way in which I was now going to go into weekend batch and there was no way I was going to be able to take your doubt session, what we did was your basic sequence will go on like this. We'll meet tomorrow, Russian Revolution and ideologies. Thereafter, we'll discuss Second World War. Then we'll discuss the Second World War and its consequences, Cold War politics. Monday, we will discuss the last module, which is module number 10, colonization, decolonization. And for Tuesday, it will be a doubt session. Any doubts which you have? No, that is not true. Look, everything has a different context. But Tuesday, we will finish the course, and basically by Monday we'll finish the course. Tuesday is your doubt session. The Saturday class, I think, is at the same time. Yes, it's actually, I'll just confirm that to you also. Yes, same time. We will have it on at 6 a.m. Same time. Redrawing of boundaries, Chituri, is unification of Germany and Italy. Yes, and then I go into Anjali. Yes, then I go into ancient medieval art and culture and modern India together in a way. So this is the basic sequence. You will go tomorrow, day after tomorrow, Saturday, then Monday, then Tuesday. Please note this because you have to understand that your doubt session has been integrated into the course itself. So therefore, what you have to do is, for the doubt session, you have to email any doubts you have to islive@byju's.com. And what you have to do very simply is, you have to just write world history doubt. So that is the basic point. Sure, Anjali, sure, that's a separate issue altogether. The upcoming batches are with me. So you just have to note this: Saturday we have class. That's the only thing. Akula, what instant doubts you ask me in class itself? But I want a more documented way in your doubts coming through. So I'll first take the doubts which come through email. Then we'll see how much time is left, and then I'll take the doubts. So the point is, you get Sunday to assess what you want to ask me by Tuesday. That is the basic point. Last class will be on Tuesday. Yes, Tuesday is the last class of world history. Okay. Now, yesterday we did something. I'm waiting for you to join in. But we have to cover World War I today. and then moved to Russian Revolution ideologies, road to Second World War, Cold War, and colonization and decolonization. And Tuesday is the out session. Please note this: Saturday we have class. I'm repeating myself again. Saturday we have class, 4th November. I'll repeat this tomorrow also. The email ID at which you have to send the doubts is islive@byju's. One second. byju's.com. Okay. Now, can we start? I will discuss with you the previous year questions on Saturday itself. Once I've covered the basic story, we'll see the previous year questions also. I have them with me today also, but we'll see where do we reach. Okay, now, yesterday we had covered a very interesting question which is called the Eastern question, which was in front of Europe in that sense. And when we were discussing the Eastern question, we saw that how the Balkan sector was going to become a problem for Europe generally. And in that sense, the Eastern question gave a big headache to the Europeans, specifically Britain, France, because Russia was very interested in the Ottoman decline. And though I gave you the theoretical answer that the Eastern question was answered in a very contradictory way, I was teaching you the tendencies which were developing in Europe vis-a-vis how the Eastern question was being answered. We had discussed the Serbian Revolution, the Greek War of Independence, and the Crimean War. And we had also discussed three very, very important tendencies. So the tendencies which you will see, all of this will make sense when I bring everything together when we start the war. Everything we are discussing here has a reason to be discussed. So there are three tendencies which we discussed out of this discussion yesterday, which is that the Serbians had started to hate the West and they were frustrated. And thereafter, the more serious ones, which is the great powers, were getting involved in regional issues, and the most dangerous, which is no compromise. War is the solution for everything. These are the three tendencies which I discussed with you yesterday, and this was based on, or these two were based on the Greek War of Independence and the Serbian War, and this was based on the Crimean War. Anybody has any issue in these three tendencies? I asked you to remember it for 24 hours, and I hope you remember them. No issues? Now, the Crimean War ended by 1856. But one thing was very clear, that Russia was not very satisfied by the way the West, what they did was that they counteracted and made sure that Russian interest was always undercut. So the point is that the Crimean War showed that Nicholas I was not ready. Compromise was something which was not on the cards, and therefore the Crimean War started unnecessarily over a Palestinian sector. And therefore the point is that when the war ended in 1856, though maybe Russia would have initially gained quite a lot, by the time when it comes to the end of the war, it is not very satisfied by the way the West is always undercutting its interest, and basically the interest interest of the Russians was always seen as a problem for Europe generally. So between 1856 to 1870-75, Europe was in a period of what we call as tension, but there was no major war which happened. But what the Russians were doing in the background, they were still adamant how to kill the Ottomans. Their target are still the Ottomans. They just want the Ottomans to die. Somehow the Ottomans should not exist. And now the simple straightforward point is, remembering all these dates is difficult. Nobody is asking you to remember the dates. I am not asking you to remember the dates. Alok, don't create issues for yourself automatically. I am asking you to remember the tendencies. And remembering dates is not difficult. If you can remember article numbers, if you can remember mountain names, if you can remember rivers, if you can remember forests, you can also remember dates. And I'm not asking you to remember each and every date. So when it will come to dates, I will tell you, I always create up. Now, if you will say that I can't remember that the First World War happened between 1914 and 18, then that is an issue. But till this point, only necessary dates have been shared with you. So don't worry about that. And yes, things will be happening parallelly. For that, I am giving you timelines. So very straightforward point. Russia was not satisfied by the way the Ottomans were not dying and the West was protecting the Ottoman Empire. This is the basic conclusion you can come to. These 20 years, will the Russians sit and just wait for the Ottomans to die? They were thinking of a plan. And that is what I'm trying to argue here. That there were 4 events and I have discussed 3 with you already. I have to discuss the Great Eastern Crisis with you. But to understand that, you need to understand that these 3 tendencies exist in Europe itself. And over and above that, there is the Russian interest, which has always been seen as a problem in the West. Anybody has any issue in understanding this? Okay. Now the Russians find a different type of solution to the Ottoman problem. Which is that they argue that why go and fight with the Ottomans directly when it can basically ask the Serbians, the Romanians, the Bulgarians, and other ethnicities to ask for independence. See, Serbia already had independence, but it was not internationally recognized. So basically what the Russians were doing, they were encouraging the nationalism in this area. And the pretext was very simple. All of these areas officially come under the Ottoman Empire. And if the Ottoman Empire will resist giving them their independence, now Russia will use that as a way to attack the Ottomans. Basically, they will add fuel to fire and encourage nationalism in this whole sector. They will say, go and ask for independence. It is your right. And they will now start to flood in documents or what we call as literature, which stoked nationalism. And the simple point is, once these ethnicities will ask for what we call as a nation state or independence from the Ottomans will respond. And the response and the response of the Ottomans is going to be most probably going to be negative. So now Russia was not fighting for its interest. It was fighting for the nationalities which exist in the Balkan area. Nandeshwar, this is your first class. What is Ottoman, sir? Ottoman Empire used to exist in Eastern Europe, 3 continents. Nandeshwar, first class. I hope it is the first class. While she writes what is the first or second, the point is that Russia changed its tactic. In the Crimean War, they had a more direct approach. They had a very direct approach. On the other hand, in the Great Eastern Crisis, Russia took a indirect approach. So think of it that in the Crimean War, India and China fight in a way directly, wherein it is Indian interest and Chinese interest. However, in the Great Eastern Crisis, India attacks China because it wanted to protect Nepal and Bhutan. Think of it like this, that there is a more frontal approach in the Crimean War, while in the Great Eastern Crisis, the Russians will start to use the pretext of nationalism to fight with the Ottomans. Are you getting my point? That there is a change in approach of the Russians. Russia still wants the Ottoman Empire to disintegrate, but now it's taken an indirect approach. Are you understanding this point? Because I want to talk about the Great Eastern Crisis now. Yes? Everybody, come on. Okay. Now, the Great Eastern Crisis is a very interesting event. So what happens is that Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, all of them fight against or rise against the Ottomans. The Ottomans try to crush it. Russia responds, that saying that I'm the big brother of all these people. You can't attack this area without my permission, and I will protect my Slavic people. And therefore, what happens is Russia attacks the Ottomans. But unlike in the Crimean War, where Russia gave time to the Ottomans to go to the British and the French, and the British and the French to come, the British and the French had already warned the Ottomans about this act. So the British and French intelligence had already warned the Ottomans, and there was a conference. It's called the Constantinople Conference, in which Britain, France said to Ottomans that Russia is going to do this only. Do not respond. Do not respond, because Russia will take the indirect approach. And they were given a concept that if you will not listen to us, we will not respond to any cry if it comes. And the same thing happens, which is that the British and the French had warned about Russian action. Russia will attack the Ottomans, and this time, the British and the French are not very quick to respond. And for the same reason, the Ottomans get defeated by the Russians in the first sector, and unlike last time, the Russians will even sign a treaty with the Ottomans that you were defeated, you are giving us these territories. It's called the Treaty of San Stefano. But 1875 to 78, out of the blue, a new power comes to the rescue of the Ottomans. Guess which power? It's 1875. Guess which power? Very good. Bismarck. Phata poster, nikla hero. So basically, Germany will respond rather than Britain and France. And unlike all treaties which had been signed previously, now they will be called to Berlin. Berlin, the capital of of Germany. Now, Germany is going to say Britain, France, Ottoman Empire, all the Balkan countries, we will meet and figure this out. This great Eastern crisis has gone for too long, and now we will find a solution. And at the Treaty of Berlin, the Russians were again humiliated. Previously, the British intervened and did everything, undid everything. Here, the Germans will intervene. Bismarck had a very strong army, and the Russians again will be humiliated. Their Treaty of San Stefano will be null and void. They will say, we don't recognize that treaty. Where did you do? What did you do? We don't know. And now, through the Treaty of Berlin, a new map of Eastern Europe will be created. But again, as I have always told you, the Europeans are the worst when it comes to map making. Worst when it comes to map making, because this Treaty of Berlin or Berlin Treaty map is going to be one of the reasons for the First World War to happen. So, very simply, why am I discussing the Great Eastern Crisis? Because Great Eastern Crisis gives me two tendencies or two very important consequences. Can I discuss the consequences? Because as you know, the events don't matter to us. What matters to us is the consequence. The first one becomes really obvious. Rise of Germany in world politics. A country which had come into existence only in 1871 was now calling people and signing treaties. And second was that Russia was now not seen as a threat to the West. Basically, the Western countries saw that Russia only has this habit of inflating its image. Whenever it comes to war, if Britain and Germany are involved, or even these big countries are involved, Russia really does not stand a chance. So, when we talk about the Great Eastern Crisis, the Great Eastern Crisis was based on the pretext that the Russians wanted still the Ottoman area. Now, Ottomans started to take a lot of loans for modernization. They were already in a fiscal crisis. Now, what will happen is Russia will encourage revolts in the Bosnian sector, in the Bulgarian sector, in the Hasmonean sector, all of this is Central Balkan area. And the great powers will even call a very important conference called the Constantinople Conference, in which the Ottomans were told about this. However, the Ottomans did not give a lot of attention to it. And when they tried to, in a way, quench or kill these revolts, Russia will respond in what is called the Russo-Turkish War of 1877-78. And in this, the Ottomans, as it is, were not very powerful. They will be successively defeated by the Russians, and they will sign the Treaty of San Stefano. But unlike any other period in world history, this time the Ottomans will not be helped by the British and the French, but now Bismarck will intervene and say that we need to meet in Berlin and figure it out what is this new tendency which has developed across Europe itself. Now, at the Congress of Berlin, at the Treaty of Berlin in 1878, the six great powers, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Austria and Russia met, along with the Ottoman Empire and the four Balkan countries, big Balkan countries, Greece, Serbia, Romania and Montenegro. Led by Bismarck, they will annul the Treaty of San Stefano. And now they will again try to make sure that Russia does not remain a threat, and already they've seen that it is not a threat, but a new map of Europe will be created. Now, before I go into that story, which is the map itself, I want to consolidate the tendencies in one slide. Can I write that down somewhere? Which is all the 5 tendencies before we move into the 20th century, which is going to be extremely significant. The century of wars. Okay. Now, is this making sense? I hope it is making sense, because that break means that you will ask me questions which should not have asked me yesterday. But again, I'm trying to bring you up to speed with regards to the story. So the story between 1800 and 1878 till 1900, based on the four very, very important events which happened in Europe, there are five tendencies which we can see very, very clearly developing in Europe at this point of time. You will see all of this will play a very important role in understanding the First World War. So the first tendency was Serbians are not important to the Europeans, and they start to hate the West. Second, very simple, straightforward. Great powers or international intervention is there in regional issues. Third is the fact that no compromise is there and war is the solution for everything. And the last two which we have seen now, Germany rises, or rather Germany emerges as a great power and becomes important counterpart of Britain. Russia is not seen as a threat and was humiliated twice in same century. So they know that they can take the Russians anytime. So very simply, if you remember, this counterpart issue is not just politics. Both in politics and as an industrial country, they become a major player in the Western sector and generally in Europe. So why Russia accepts? Because whenever Britain is, or France and even Germany are sitting on the table, Russia has no other option. The problem with Russia is this only: it can defeat the Ottoman Empire and nothing more. And we will discuss about Russia tomorrow also, that this is actually true also. Russians were useless when it comes to fighting big powers. So they were very Francish in that way. But I will tell you that. So just accept the fact that Russia, their inflated image, the Tsar being very, very big, has now been punctured twice. So very simply, five tendencies before we enter into 1900, in which within the first 20 years, there will be a major war. Can I now assume that you know these five tendencies and there's no issue? Bismarck asked Russia for help in unifying Germany. Yes. Now unified. So now done. No permanent enemies, no permanent allies. So can I now move to the period between 1878 and 1914? Because here things will get accelerated very quickly. Okay, perfect. These five tendencies have developed in Europe during this period. Okay, because for me the events don't matter. This is what really matters. So if you remember the date, if you don't remember the date, doesn't really matter. This is what you have to remember as it is all backstory for the First World War. Now the period between 1878 and 1900 was basically plagued by these five tendencies are the reason for the First World War. In a way. So the period between 1878 and 1900 was plagued by the very messy map which was created by the Congress of Berlin, or what we call as the Berlin Treaty. And I want to show you that map because we have to note certain things in it. One second. Yes. Now, this is the map which you need to understand. Pay attention. Again, doesn't really matter if you learn it, you just have to understand it. So this pink color which you see is the Ottoman Empire. Now at the Congress of Berlin, it was seen that let us do one thing. Let's sort this issue out. Let's sort this issue out and give these countries their independence as much as possible. So the first country which actually existed for a very long time but was never recognized was Serbia. The Serbians get recognition of their independence at this point of time, which is that now they have been considered as a country in Europe. So the Serbians finally get independence recognized by the state. So in 1878, they are now seen as a country. Now they also create one more country, which is this Romania. This is Romania. Now there is one more country which was coming out of it, which is Bulgaria. This is Bulgaria. Now there's a problem. And this is why I ask you never to give cartography to a European, because Bulgaria was a very very messed up issue, wherein what they did was they called it Greater Bulgaria, and though they had their own government, they had autonomy also, somehow the great powers thought, let us still show this area as a part of the Ottoman Empire. So basically, the Ottomans in a way still had control over this sector. So Greater Bulgaria, they have everything. They have autonomy, they have own government also. But somehow it is still shown as a map of the Ottoman Empire. It's still shown in the map of Ottoman Empire. It was believed that such a big country should not be given automatic independence. So let them be under the Ottomans. The question, if you're asking me why, the answer to that question is it is a dumb move. They somehow thought that it is better to have a Bulgaria which is also having a certain amount of Ottoman control. And this is basically how they answered the Eastern question. So they don't want to fully give Bulgaria independence. They want to mess it up. This is what the British and the Europeans have always done, which is try to create political turmoil, because that is the way they will actually be able to destabilize that area. So now Asia Minor is, when we have Asia Major, which is basically the India-China part, Asia Minor is a geographical term. Now, yes, no complete resolution. That has always been their case. Now, this is not the only area which they messed up. There was one more area which was in question. And this area is going to be very significant in our story. And it is called Bosnia. Now, Bosnia is a more or less majority of the population is Serbian speaking also. culturally also very close to Serbia. And the Serbians, in a way, always saw this area as a part of their larger understanding. Now, when it came to Bosnia, the Serbians became very desperate when it came to the Treaty of Berlin. See, the problem of Serbia is that it is a landlocked country. And most of its neighbors have access to some sea for sure, except for Serbia. So the Serbians say to the Germans and to the British that, okay, you never came to our help in the War of Independence. We will forget everything. We will forget everything. We will never ask for anything. Just give us Bosnia. Just give us Bosnia. By giving us Bosnia, we will get access to the sea. That is basically our biggest desire, and everything will be forgotten. Everything is forgotten. So basically, the Serbians saw Bosnia as a part of their bigger, greater Serbia concept, and the Serbians really wanted Bosnia. So if you ask a Serbian at this point of time, why have you failed in the examination? They will say, because I don't have access to sea, that is why. So in the night, if you wake a Serbian up at this point of time, 1878, 79, and you wake them up, he will just wake up saying Bosnia, Bosnia, access to sea, access to sea. They are extremely, what we call as, they are mad about Bosnia. They're like, Bosnia, Bosnia, Bosnia. I was not able to concentrate in class. Bosnia. I want Bosnia. If I get Bosnia, everything is going to be perfect. I just want to go and lie on the beach. I want access to sea. They are literally obsessed with this area. And this obsession was not there before the what we call the Great Eastern Crisis. It is after the Great Eastern Crisis, they saw Bosnia as a very viable area as part of the larger understanding of Serbia. So it's just that they want access to the sea, they get access to the Aegean Sea, they get access to the Mediterranean. Now, this is where the West remains the West. See, they could have easily given Bosnia to Serbia. It's a straightforward cultural thing. They have cultural connection also. But at the Treaty of Berlin, Austria and the Italians, they were not very keen for the Serbians to have access to the sea. And specifically, Austria said to the Germans that, see, Serbians are self-obsessed. Serbians are, at the end of the day, in a way, Russians. If we give them access to the sea, they will become a nuisance in this area. They will become a nuisance in this area. Now, against the wishes of Serbia, after pleading throughout that Congress that we want Bosnia, the West will betray Serbia, and the Bosnian sector was again created as a very problematic zone. It was not given to Serbia, which will basically make Serbia mad about Bosnia. Literally, they will become basically, they will sit and say Bosnia, Bosnia. Jaap karte the Bosnia. They were mad about Bosnia. And what they will do is that they basically say, Bosnia, see, it will be shown in the map of the Ottomans. Shown in the map of the Ottomans. But this is the problem. But Austria will have administrative control over Bosnia. Now you see, why do I say that don't give Europeans map making? Now tell me, what is the logic of that? You have created Bulgaria, but you've again shown it in the Ottoman map. You have created Bosnia as a separate zone, but that zone is still shown in the Ottoman maps, and it is administered by the Austrians. So this messed up, complicated map which came up, if it is seeming complicated, yes, it is complicated. It is really messed up, literally messed up map. It's a complicated map which they unnecessarily created. So very simply, in our five tendencies, one second, in our five tendencies, I can expand on this one further and say that because of the Bosnia issue, Serbians felt betrayed and are now obsessed by Greater Serbia idea, which is to take Bosnia. So, five tendencies we've discussed. Nobody has no issue there. I can add a sixth one, which is basically Greater Bulgaria and Bosnia were created as problematic zones. The problem with Greater Bulgaria is autonomous but still under Ottomans. And for me, what matters to you, what matters is that you remember this, which is Bosnia shown under Ottoman map, but is administered by Austria. And this is all unnecessarily, Akula, there's no answer for this. Why? They just wanted to create it like that. So, as you can see, on the turn of the century, Central Europe is, or what we call Eastern Europe, is messed up. There's no clarity. Over and above that, there are five tendencies which develop, but the Serbians are now going to become a major problem for the Europeans. But the simple point is, within this 1800 to 1900 period, they have literally created the foundations for something very big to happen. No compromise, international intervention, Serbians have hatred and obsession, Russia ceases to be a problem, Germany becomes a big country, and they have created multiple zones which are already problematic. If all of this is clear, then we talk about 20th century. No issues? Okay. Now, whilst all of this is happening, between 1878 and 1905, there was one more thing which was happening, which is called the alliance systems, which is that everybody could see that something big is going to happen. So secret alliances had become a major concept at this point of time. For example, France and Russia were in an alliance. France and Britain were in an alliance. This is called the Triple Entente. And then Austria, Italy and Germany were in an alliance. Basically, how you have a friends group, 5-6 people together, but there will always be internal understanding between the group that if he will go, I will also go. If he goes, he will also go. If he goes, he will not go, or this and that. So basically, they have internally created a lot of suspicion, because what this creates is more and more suspicion, because everybody is now basically standing with a knife behind their back. They're all standing in the same room. Nobody knows who's connected to whom, and more or less secretly they are operating. It's not like NATO. NATO is a proper organization. These are secret alliances. These are secret alliances wherein nobody knows them on surface. Now, in a period where tensions are high, our secret alliance is a good thing. That's the point. It is a very dangerous thing to exist when things are already very suspicious. So if you think of it, somebody asks you why did the First World War happen, you can see that the context for it had been brewing up for 100 years. So when we go to 1900 Europe, 5 tendencies are there, plus secret alliances are there, and plus over and above that, there is a lot of suspicion, there's a lot of trust deficit, and Serbians are obsessed with an area, and over and above that, the Balkan sector is still not stable. So this 100 years created the foundation in which I will now discuss what will happen, which is called the build-up to the First World War. This is the years up to the First World War. These are the 6 events which are going to lead to the Sarajevo crisis, which will start the war. Everyone ready? Comfortable? What I'll do is that I'll discuss these. I'll give you a small 5-minute break. Then I'll give you a staggered break today, so that because it becomes heavy after a point, so I'll split up the breaks. So don't worry about that. Okay, now 5 tendencies are already there, which came up between 1800 and 1900. Plus alliances are also there. Now, in this context, the first major escalation point is called the Moroccan crisis. Now, pay attention. Again, the event does not matter to us. The consequence does. Consequence matters. Now, what happened in what we call as the Moroccan crisis? See, Morocco is a small, not a small, but a North African country. So Morocco and Egypt were very interesting sectors. Morocco was under French domination and Egypt was under British domination. And though the French had not fully taken control of Morocco as a colony, both recognized each other's power over the other country, which is that Britain said, okay, French control Morocco, and the French accepted the fact that Britain controls Egypt. Now, basically, this is a threat on the sovereignty of the Sultan of Morocco. So, the Sultan of Morocco knew that today or tomorrow, the French will come and take away power from him. And now he's looking for allies. Now, in this context, it is in this context that Germany comes into the picture. See, Bismarck is dead. Bismarck dies by 1893. But Germany is desperate. See, though Germany came into existence in 1871, the problem is Germany was too late to the scene when it comes to colonies. Very few colonies it has. It has some 2-3 islands in the Pacific, certain parts of Africa which are more or less useless. So Germany is very desperate about, very desperate about getting certain areas which they can control for their industrial capitalism. And as we know, Germany was expanding quite quickly when it comes to industrial power, and therefore there was a need to find colonies also. So now what the Sultan of Morocco does is he approaches the Germans. He approaches the Germans, and the Germans are very happy to basically have Morocco under their influence. And what the Germans do is that there is a conference which they call in a conference in 1905, which is called the Berlin Conference of 1905. In this, in front of everyone except for Britain and France, who did not attend this conference, in front of everyone, Germany says to the world, we protect the sovereignty of the Sultan of Morocco. So basically, Germany argues that it is a protector, that Morocco is a protectorate of Germany. Basically, we are the big brother of Germany, of Morocco. No one can touch Morocco till we are alive. Nobody can touch Morocco whilst we are alive. Now, the day the conference will end, next day, France will capture the police and the treasury of Morocco. Basically, now trying to take over Morocco in that sense. And ironically, nobody said nothing. No one said nothing. The same powers who were clapping in the conference saying, yes, Morocco is protected, did not do anything. And now Germany basically is in a dilemma. If it responds, it will be war with France, which makes no sense. As it is, there is too much tension. So Germany is basically humiliated in the Moroccan crisis because they cannot respond. It will mean war, and diplomatically, they have been humiliated. Morocco was in the picture, Tulsi, because of the fact that the French takeover of Morocco was becoming more and more imminent by 1900. Sultan was squabbling around to find allies. He found Germany as an ally. Now imagine that you say that Germany said to the Moroccans that you are my little brother. Here somebody came, beat up your brother, and you were not able to do anything. Now these details really don't matter to me. What matters to me is the basic point that through the Moroccan crisis, Russia is not called. Through the Moroccan crisis, Germany is diplomatically humiliated, and now the Germans wanted revenge for this. More than that, Germany will develop a certain hatred for the French. So do you get it? Again, this story doesn't matter. The consequence matters. Germany wants revenge. It is humiliated and it is now developing a certain hatred for the French. Anybody has any issue here? Morocco goes to Germany. Germany says, I will protect. France takes over. Nobody says nothing. Germany can't fight with France over this issue. Anybody, any issue? Come on. French were not in Egypt. French were in Morocco. English were developing the Suez Canal in Egypt. That is why it is under its domination. Anybody, any issue? Moroccan crisis. Because we have to now build up to the Sarajevo crisis. Okay. Berlin Conference was just 1 to 2 days before this crisis actually started. Okay. Now the most interesting event which happened just after the Berlin crisis, the Moroccan crisis, is that two powers which had been fighting for a year, for 1 century, now came together, and which is called the British-Russian alliance. Try to understand this point. See, I'll show you the map of Europe here. 1 second. Yes. The fact is, Morocco is somewhere here, North Africa. Moroccan crisis is a diplomatic humiliation for the German Empire or Germany. And it is a humiliation because they did a diplomatic drama and next day France took over Morocco. Nobody said nothing. So very simply, you can't see Morocco obviously because it is not in the map, but it is there. Now, simple, straightforward point. Germans are humiliated. Anybody has any issue here? How are they humiliated? I told you. Morocco said, they said we'll protect Morocco. Morocco was taken over. It is a bit diplomatic humiliation. Now, very simply, see, Britain and France were already in an alliance. France and Russia were also in an alliance. Now there will be something called the October Manifesto, which I will discuss with you tomorrow. Again, take it on face value, Russia's history, in which Russia became a constitutional monarchy in 1905. When they will become a constitutional monarchy, which was basically a drama, but they did, the most unlikeliest of thing happened, which was that Britain went into an alliance with Russia. This 1907 alliance was seen as a major change in geopolitics because between 1800 and 1900, Russia was the common enemy. Now, as I told you, there are no permanent enemies and allies. By 1907, these two countries have come together. Can anybody tell me the reason why? Reason why? Very good. This is called the encircling of Germany. Basically, their combined jealousy against Germany, which is now seen as a common enemy of everyone, these three powers were very jealous of German rise between 1870 and 1890 till 1900. By 1900, Germany had overtaken Britain. Now, if I had a major diplomatic humiliation in 1905, and my common enemy is going into an alliance, how will I feel? How will I feel? Yes, I will feel even more threatened. See, this is threatening. This alliance made Germany even more suspicious, and the biggest thing is suspicious, and the biggest thing is that now Germans feel threatened. So the first two events in the first 5 to 6 years of there was an alliance between France and Russia already. In the first 7 years of 1900 is that Germany became a hero in 1878. But by 1907, the West had shown to the Germans that we don't care about you. But more than that, Germany had been humiliated. It was seeking revenge, and it will also develop a hatred for the French. And more than that, the Germans will now feel threatened also. So first two events, conclusion, anybody has any issue? Because then we'll go back to the Balkans. Chituri, some part of Germany is in Austria. This is not the modern map of Europe. So obviously it is a 1900 map. So don't go by the boundaries. They will change 3 times more. Okay. What was response over humiliation by Germany? Germany had to basically not respond. Because if they responded, the war would have started in 1900 only. So they had no other option but to basically look at all of this and feel more and more humiliated. Okay. Germany makes other alliances. No, it will not make other alliances. That is called the triple entente. Entente means alliance. Second, because they were now being encircled by big powers. Wasn't Russia going through their own October Revolution? Mona Lisa October Revolution happens in 1917. October Manifesto and October Revolution are different. February October Revolution 1917. France, UK, Russia all went into alliance, yes. Why France and Russia already in an alliance? Because both these countries knew that Germany needed to be countered. Yeah, you're asking me a very innocent question. Why are we into an alliance with America and Australia when they have never actually done anything for India? Why are we in an alliance with the Americans? China. So now you try to understand this. For geopolitical reasons, everybody comes together. Their common enemy is Germany. So it is self-interest. You've already done international relations. And then you're asking me this question means that you're not understanding how geopolitics works. The point is that all of this is geopolitics, which is everybody's protecting their own interest. 5 tendencies have developed in Europe. Alliances were already in place. A new alliance comes up between Britain and Russia. Germany has been humiliated. Germany feels threatened. Anybody has any issue in this? Because this is not really what the discussion is about. It's not about that. It's about understanding how each of these events will explain the starting of the war. So I will write all of this on one slide. Don't worry. But you need to just let me go through the events. The events don't matter. Nobody is asking you the question, write the build up to the First World War. But they can ask you causes. Everybody is going to write standard causes which are given in standard books. I am giving you something more to write which will give you an edge over others. That is the basic point. So first 2 events are done. Can I move to Bosnia, first Balkan, second Balkan? Okay. Now if you remember, 1 second. This part is basically Bosnia. What was the issue with Bosnia? What was the issue with Bosnia? Good. Austria controls it also. Shown in Ottoman map also. Shown in Ottoman map. Who wants Bosnia? Who is obsessed with Bosnia? Serbia? Very good. Now, if I was a Serbian and I had one bullet would I be in a dilemma to kill which power? Would I be in a dilemma? If I was a Serbian, I had to shoot either Austria and Ottomans. Would I be in a dilemma to actually find out who should I kill? Yes, there's a dilemma. Because Austria also controls it. Ottomans also control it. So as of right now, if I want to hate the problem in my life, there's not one problem, there's two problems. The Ottomans are also involved and the Austrians are also involved. So the Serbians cannot basically channel their hatred to one power. They have to do in two powers. But this issue will be solved in what is called the 1908 Bosnia crisis. See, now in 1908, what will happen is a new, very amateur, I don't even want to name him, or we don't even need to know his name, an amateur, very, very young sultan will come to power. And he will say, how can we allow Bosnia to be part of our empire and still allow the Austrian to rule it? Over smartness. Now, in 1908, what will happen is Ottomans will fight with the Austrians over Bosnia. That we want Bosnia full control back. And obviously, the Ottomans were not capable of defeating the Austrians. And the Austrians will win this war, will win this conflict and war. And they will now remove this dual control, and now Austria will add Bosnia to its map. Bosnia to its map. Now, who should the Serbians kill? Who should the Serbians kill? Austria. So in our stories and events, Bosnian crisis is Ottomans wanted Bosnia back, Austria wins. But for us, why it is important? Because Serbians now have one common enemy. They have now their obstacle to Bosnia, that obstacle is Austria. Why am I telling you this? Because I've already told you, Sarajevo crisis is when a Serbian shoots an Austrian. So now do you get it? Why would a Serbian shoot an Austrian for Bosnia? Because previously they did not know who to shoot. Now they understand, okay, my biggest problem in Austria, my biggest problem is Austria. If Austria exists, Serbians cannot sleep well. They wake up saying, Bosnia, Bosnia, I will kill Austria, I will kill Austria. There's no dilemma now. They now can very simply do a certain type of channeled hatred. Shiddat se they can now hate Austria. They were not able to do it because they were not able to concentrate. So the Bosnia issue in a way is killed, and Serbia's one access to the sea is now with Austria. So now they will just puri kainat, everything, they will channel all the hatred towards Austria because Austria is the problem for them. Now, whilst all of this is happening, the Balkan sector is going to become extremely unstable by 1912. And now we are moving very quickly towards the war. Now what will happen in 1912 is that Bulgaria, Serbia, Romania, along with Montenegro, they will basically, one second. Yes, they will basically, 1912, Bulgaria plus Romania plus Serbia plus Greece. All of these countries will say that if the Ottomans are so useless, let's do one thing. Let's all come together and defeat the Ottomans and then take whatever there is in Eastern Europe amongst ourselves. So what will happen in what we today call as the First Balkan War? In this, the Balkan League, this is the Balkan League, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria and Serbia along with Greece, they will fight with the Ottomans. Basically, now they will try to suffocate the Ottomans themselves. They will think that nobody is going to come to the rescue. So why not kill the Ottomans amongst ourselves? And they will fight with the Ottomans. Now, in this, what is going to happen is that there's a small area here which is called Macedonia. This is called Macedonia. Macedonia will be occupied by Serbia. They will take this area. Bulgaria will say that now we are independent. And once this war will start, Britain and Germany will feel that they need to intervene. And in the last time these two countries will ever come together for one whole century, both of these powers intervene. They say, don't fight amongst yourselves. We need to figure it out. So this war will be stopped by Germany and Britain together. Two big powers fighting, stopping the war. But now what will happen is Romania will be given its standard boundary. Bulgaria will be given its independence, which should have been given in 1878 itself. Now, what will happen is that there's an area called Albania. Now, Albania was a new area which was coming out of the Ottoman Empire. Now, Serbia said, okay, to the British and the Germans, they said, okay, don't give us Bosnia, but then give us Albania. You give us Albania, we will forget about Bosnia. Because what does Albania give Serbia? Yes, the access to the sea. So they say everything we will forget. We will stop everything. We will stop hating everyone. Just give us Albania and we will be happy. We will not say anything to you. Forget about us there. However, again, Italy and specifically Austria, knowing that they had taken Bosnia, so they will not stop at Albania. Austria will say to its alliance partner, do anything, but don't let Serbia get Albania. And basically, Albania, rather than being given to the Serbians, it will be created as a new country. Now, if you are a Serbian, how will you feel? If you are a Serbian, how will you feel? Infuriated, angry, that every time they have asked for a very simple, straightforward thing, Europeans had done a drama or tried to find something as a solution to basically not give them that. So the First Balkan War is the Balkan League versus Ottomans. But the main consequence is Albania is created as a country and not given to Serbia. So very simply, Serbians now are desperate and angry. Yes, Serbia would have got Albania if Britain would have and Germany would have not intervened. Now, if you remember, this area, Macedonia, was with whom? Was with whom? Was with whom? Was with Serbia. But it is basically Bulgarian territory. So within the next year, in 1913, Serbia will fight with Bulgaria for Macedonia. And what is going to happen is that the Serbians will win. And nobody is going to say nothing. And this is basically Serbia's moment of glory. Now the Serbians can do anything. Chhu lenge asma. Basically, within 1 year, they get the biggest disappointment in their life, but they also now think they can do anything. So the Second Balkan War, when the Serbians fight with the Bulgarians and they win, now these Serbians will become, Serbia will become overconfident. Will become overconfident. They will say, "Okay, we've taken Macedonia. Now let's do something. Let us take what we always wanted to take. And how will we take it? Go and shoot the next king to be of Austria." This was their solution. So very simply, the trigger for the First World War was a Serbian called Gavrilo Princip, who will go to a place called Sarajevo, which is now the capital of Bosnia, used to be part of Austria, where Archduke Ferdinand, who was basically the son of the king of Austria, he was going to be the next king. He and his wife were on tour. Gavrilo Princip will go and shoot both the prince and the what we call queen to be, or king and queen to be. And now this will create a chain reaction which will basically trigger the First World War. But before I do that, what I want to do here is two things. Consolidate all of this information in one slide, which is the 5 tendencies, the alliance systems, and all of this, and then talk about Sarajevo and start the war. Can I do that? I told you total 10 events are there. We've discussed all of these 10, and you can see that there is a logic to them. To explain Sarajevo crisis, that why would a Serbian shoot an Austrian, I had to basically build all of this. I had to explain to you why do the Serbians hate Austrians. And I hope I've been able to establish that also, which is this concept that either give us Bosnia or give it Albania. They will try to now take Bosnia through force. So let's do one thing. One second. Yes, okay. 1800 to 1913. I'm now going to write everything together. I'm going to give you a short break here, don't worry. Now, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. First, Serbians develop a very dangerous obsession with Bosnia and hate Austria for it. What does obsession mean? Divanapan. Obsession. So they want Bosnia and they hate Austria. Second is the great powers were involved and intervening in local and regional issues. Third, no one wanted compromise. War was the solution for everything. Why Austria did not want Serbia to have sea access? Because once the Serbians enter the sea, they would then basically start to block the Austrians. So it is in their interest to keep the Austrian landlocked, because then the sea trade route would get disrupted. And that is a Austrian hatred towards Serbia, which is that they can accept everything but not accept this. Now, no one wanted compromise. War was a solution for everything. War was a solution for everything. Fourth, Russia now became an alliance partner of Britain and France, and not a threat. Germany rose to geopolitical fame but was humiliated and threatened by Britain, France, and Russia. Sixth, Serbians were not allowed to get Albania, but their win against Bulgaria gave them confidence. Seventh, the Europeans were having secret alliances which increased suspicion. Ottomans were mostly out of the picture of geopolitics of the West. Anybody has any issue in understanding any of this point? 8 points I've written. Anybody has any issue in this? The Europeans were having secret alliances. So increased suspicion. What is the issue here? You go into secret alliances, more and more suspicion. Six, Serbians were not given Albania after the First Balkan War. And they got overconfident after defeating Bulgaria. That is the way they will start the war. How did Russia become an ally of Britain? Again, an innocent question. Their combined hatred against the Germans. So, all hated Germany. All these are tendencies, yes. All this will explain to you why the war will start in a certain way. You will see it will be a comical way in which it will start. Should we take rest? These are all pretext. You think of them as prerequisites, pretext tendencies. Yes, sure. The Great War, the great powers involved in intervening in local and regional issues. Intervening. Why did Russia disown Serbia again? You will see they will own Serbia once and that will lead to the war. You are asking me questions which are going to happen later. Austria was itself a landlocked country. No, Austria is not a landlocked country. It's not a landlocked country. Today it may be a landlocked country. You're talking about Austria today, not at that point of time. How without colonies Germany became a superpower? Better access to resources, had a lot of resources within Germany itself, better technology, and took it from the British. That is a question we did yesterday only. Now, can I take a small break here and then come back and start the war? Yes? Okay. So we come back at, I'm giving you the break proper here, 7:40. And when we come back at 7:40, we will take the story forward, start the war, and then discuss the fronts of the war in that regard. 7:40, we come back. Okay, now, what happens is very simple and straightforward. You already know the first part of it. Is that on 28th June 1914, at the city of Sarajevo, Gavrilo Princip will shoot Franz Ferdinand, the next king to be of Austria. And as soon as Austria will see that the Serbians have in a way killed their king, now the Austrians want a solution. Now the Austrians want a solution, which is that enough is enough. The Serbians have been a nuisance for us for a very, very long time. And very simply, what is the point of Austria becoming landlocked country today if it is, again, Dinesh, Austria was not made into a landlocked country with their own. That's a Second World War thing. We'll discuss it thereafter. Don't ask questions from 1945-46. Listen to me. So very simply, Serbia has now killed the king to be. Austria wants a solution. Austria very simply says that we will now not allow Serbia to exist, and they will send certain demands to Serbia. If the Serbians accept all of the demands, the Austrians will not attack Serbia. However, if they don't accept it, Austria will start a war with Serbia. The Serbians get all the demands. The Serbians are ready to accept most of it. But one demand is what basically Serbia is never ready to accept. Austria said that Serbians will give up their demand for Bosnia. But Serbians said, we will never ever give up the demand for Bosnia. Till we have the last breath in our body, we will ask for Bosnia for sure. So basically, Serbia has now left no other option, and very simply, the first move which happens is that Austria will attack Serbia. Austria will attack Serbia. Now, till this point, Serbia had multiple times pleaded to the Russians for help, but never had Russia responded. But miraculously, as soon as Serbia is attacked, the Serbians will seek the refuge of the Russians. And they will say to the Russians that, yes, you never came up and stood for us when it comes to our war of independence. You did not give us Bosnia. You did not give us Albania. But we are Slavs at the end of the day. Help us, please, O Russia. And out of the blue, the Russians start to mobilize their forces towards their western border in order to help the Serbians. Now, as soon as mobilization means to move your military towards their western border, as soon as that happens, Austria says to Germany that there is movement along the Russian border. You need to ask Russia not to mobilize. So Germany is going to ask the Russians that why are you mobilizing when Austria and Serbia are fighting? What is the mobilization of your army towards the western border? And Germany gives an ultimatum that if you do not stop mobilization, it will mean an act of war. Russia did not stop the mobilization, and Germany will attack Russia. Germany will attack Russia. Now, as soon as Germany attacks Russia, France, the alliance partner of Russia, says to Germany that what is the point of this aggression on the part of Germany with regards to Russia? The real war is between Austria and Serbia, and Germany will not take this as very well taken advice, and they will attack France in the way they were trying to take out that revenge, and they will attack it through Belgium. Belgium is a small country which was protected by a very big country, the foremost industrial power, Britain. And when Belgium neutrality is violated by the Germans, Britain is going to attack Germany. Now, tell me one thing. Who started the war? Who started the war? Serbia and Austria. But now who is fighting the war on two fronts? Germany. Now try to understand why did I say that these tendencies are important. See, Austria, Serbia, you need to understand because of Bosnia. That will explain to you why the first action happened. But Germany gave a very irrational reaction to a very problematic situation. See, if you look at it, if these five tendencies were not there, the war would have never started only. First tendency is what? Serbia hates Austria. Therefore, if this was not there, the first act would not happen. Second was what? No compromise, war is the solution. You see, everybody was ready to fight a war. Germany said, stop, if I will go for. Nobody was ready to compromise. If Germany and Russia would be able to compromise, the second act would not happen. Third act was the fact that the great powers were getting involved in regional issues. Tell me, why would or why should Russia mobilize for something between Serbia and Austria? It's their territorial dispute, but now Russia is responding. Last but not the least, the fact that Germany had been humiliated, the response of Germany was very irrational, because attacking France to Belgium should not have been their act, but they were taking out that humiliating revenge which they seen at the Moroccan crisis. So if I don't talk about any of those tendencies, you will never be able to understand why would this comical scene of events, or what we call as cascading effects or cascading domino effect, would happen. So Austria attacks Serbia, Russia mobilizes, Germany attacks Russia, Germany attacks France via Belgium, Britain attacks Germany. So the past 2.5, 3 hours was all to come to this point to understand why did the First World War start like this. Now, if you understand the First World War starting, I want to give an analogy And when you understand that analogy, I want to then discuss the war itself. Please write all these 5 points. Alina, all these 5 points are written here. You see, Austria declares war on Serbia. Russia starts mobilization. Germany attacks Russia after Russia does not cancel mobilization. Germany attacks France. Britain attacks Germany vis-a-vis the violation of Belgium neutrality. It is written that. Why was Russia mobilizing towards Germany? Look at this map. If you have to go from Russia to Serbia, you would have to go to your west, right? They would go like this. Now try to understand the analogy and see, once I'm done with telling you the war, I give you a master timeline because that is important. Before we do that, I'll give you an analogy. We'll look at the causes and then we will move towards the war itself. So what we've discussed till this point is the tendencies, and now we started the war. The analogy is very simple, straightforward. If you can understand the analogy, you will never ever forget this war, how it started. Why Germany attacks France? Surya, you tell me. Why did Germany attack France? Why did Germany attack France? Because France tried to be a little bit oversmart by asking them to stop, and Germany was already seeking revenge. That's the only point. Why the Belgium route? Because that is the least guarded, and that was also a miscalculation by the Germans. They thought that the British will not respond. The Alsace and Lorraine sector is a little bit more heavy deployment by the French. Okay. Now, why it was portrayed as World War when it is completely struggle within Europe? Naveen, shuru hai. Abhi to shuruaat. Just beginning. First, let me finish the story between 1914 and 18, and then you can ask the same question. Then I will tell you. Okay. Why Austria attacked Serbia? Because of the Sarajevo crisis. Serbian shot an Austrian. Okay. Now, analogy of the war itself, you need to understand. Very straightforward. See, imagine it like this. This is a bar, and there is Britain along with his what we call as younger brother Belgium. There is France, there is Russia along with his younger brother Serbia, and you have Germany along with younger brother Austria. Now basically what happens is that these two very young brothers fight with each other. Children, very small children. So Serbia and Austria fight. It is of no purpose for these adults to respond. But as soon as Serbia starts to get a little bit dominated by Austria, Serbia says to Russia, help me, big brother. So Russia then starts to basically unbutton the shirt and basically starts to mobilize. As soon as Russia does that, Germany goes and says to Russia, why are you getting ready to fight? These two small children are fighting. Let them sort it out. It is of no purpose for you to fight in a child's war. So Russia says, no, I will not let anybody dominate my brother. So now Germany says, either you back down, and if you don't back down, I will have to intervene. And whilst all of this is happening, Serbia and Austria now sit in the side. They are now basically looking at this drama which is happening, and Russia will not stop its mobilization, and Germany is now going to punch Russia. Germany is now going to punch Russia. Now, as soon as Germany punches Russia, France goes and says to Germany, why are you two fighting? What is the point of you two fighting? So Germany says, I don't like your face. मेरे को तेरा चेहरा पहले से पसंद नहीं था. And now Germany gives a punch to the French. However, this was a very interesting scene because when Germany goes for a punch towards France, there was that small child Belgium sitting on the bar stool with an ice cream, and whilst punching France, Germany first hits Belgium and then France. And as soon as Belgium is hit, now the biggest bouncer of that bar, Britain says, who hit my younger son or younger brother? Everybody points towards Germany, and now Britain is fighting with Germany also. Very simply, the war started with two minor powers fighting, Austria and Serbia. But somehow now Germany is fighting with France also, Britain also, and and Russia also. Think of it like this, and you will never forget that basically the people who started the war were now looking at the tamasha, and whilst that was happening, these big powers are now fighting with each other. Why Germany hit Belgium? They thought that we will hit this small child, nobody is going to say nothing. The easiest way to go into France was actually via Belgium, the least guarded line it was. So Belgium neutrality means that Belgium, it was a very small power. It had always had an alliance with, this is called the secret alliance. It had a secret alliance with Britain that if somebody attacks Belgium, you will help me. And Belgium, see, if you look at it, Belgium actually did not have anything to do with this war. But because the French guard the Alsace-Lorraine sector much bigger than the Belgium sector, that was the easiest way to go it. So Belgium basically was not even involved in any way or form. It was just a part of this concept. That's it. So very simply, this is how the war starts. This is how the war starts, which is that you have Austria attacking Serbia, Russia mobilizing, Germany attacking Russia, Germany attacking France, but that attack goes through Belgium. This line is guarded by the French more. This line is guarded less. So the Germans did the simple thing. Belgium neutrality is guaranteed by the UK, and now UK will attack Germany also. So if you look at it, this war was basically unnecessary. War was actually unnecessary because everybody was acting irrationally. If you look at it, nobody knew what it was, what was the main issue? Serbia. But now Serbia is not even fighting. What was the main issue? Serbia. But Serbia triggered the war and then sat and saw the drama which was happening in Europe. So the First World War causes, if you have to explain it to the examiner, the war did not start because of the Sarajevo crisis. The war started because of the way Europe had developed certain tendencies which culminated in something like this. Now, if this makes sense, I will make a schematic map. Sachin, don't tell me, I do it. I will make it in the end, once I've explained to you each and every year. So, you can't make, listen to me. A lot of you have this very bad habit, which is, sir, I'll make a mind map in the examination. But mind map बना के what, you will let the examiner figure it out. मैंने तो लिख दिया, तुम देख लो. ऐसे तो, that does not happen. Mind maps are to learn. Mind maps are not to give it to the examiner that you figure it out. Okay, I've made a schematic map. ये France है, ये Germany है. Now this happened. You will make arrows and they will figure it out. No. Mind maps are supplementary to writing. Writing is still important. So you cannot make mind maps in the examination and expect the examiner to figure out the flow, also understand the explanation and everything. No. You can't say that these 10 events caused the First World War. These 10 events created the pretext for the war. Can I now discuss the causes? I've written it in the PPT also. If you understand how the war started, because a lot of students know are not able to explain why the First World War started. First World War, can I discuss the causes from the PPT now? Okay. don't even in, see, I'll tell you, 7 minutes you have in the exam. I don't know when you will make the mind map, when you will explain it also, and how will you will actually write it in the exam. Every question you have to write within 7 minutes. 7 minutes you will not be able to write. If you are going to put 15 minutes in one answer, you will still get 7 or 8. But you still have to write other answers. So stop this tendency of making mind maps without giving explanation. That is the most important point. Okay. Now, if I have to write the causes of the war, what you can do is that for a 250 word answer, you can summarize all the tendencies, but I've also given a certain type of explanation which would be good enough for a 150 word answer. But now let me explain the causes. Again, in the examination, please understand, cause and significance can be asked, not course. Nobody is going to ask you how was the war fought. That is not going to be asked. It will be significance of the war or cause of the war. So please pay attention to this point very clearly. Cause and significance again is important. Now, the first cause in an institutional way, if you want to write, is alliance systems. We know suspicion, arms race, and humiliation amongst countries had become very common, and nationalism was at the boil at this point of time. This is the first institutionalized cause. You can talk about the tendencies if you have the words to write it. If not, you can write these points. Then second is called rabid nationalism. Rabid means rotten. See, if you look at it, the biggest issue of the Serbians are what? We want a nation, we want a nation, we want Bosnia, we want Bosnia. This is called rotten nationalism. Rotten nationalism is that you will do anything and everything for the country. And therefore, the Balkan nationalism, which will intensify. Now, do you understand when I was discussing the Eastern question with you, why were the Europeans happy for the Ottomans to hold this area? Why was the ticking time bomb in the hand of the Ottomans and nobody really cared about it? Because you see, as soon as the Ottomans started to decline, that is the reason why the First World War happened. 3 crore people were dead because of the Eastern question. So Balkan nationalism was the reason why the First World War happened. And it is not just that. It is that everybody was very nationalistic. So Balkan area, there was a lot of nationalism. The French always had this feeling that Alsace and Lorraine has been lost. The Germans had this feeling that our nation has been humiliated. The British were like, how can we not protect the Belgium sector? Serbians, the Polish, everybody had something to fight for. This is called nationalism. A small area called the Trinotrist area was held by Austria and the Italians wanted it. So everybody wanted something from each other and their nationalism was very high for that. Nationalism, loving your nation till a point is good. But after that, when you start to threaten other nations, for example, Serbia and their obsession with Bosnia, it can have multiple geopolitical what we call the connotations or domino effects. And that is what is going to happen or what happened in Europe in that regard. So alliance system only starts to stoke fuel into fire, but rabid nationalism is the inert feeling which everybody had that we want to do something for our nation, we will kill everyone if we have to. And the other was the role of press. See, at this point of time, the press which existed, the printing press, the what we call as radios and even television, that the problem was the role of press was extremely bad. Which is that role of press was that they were nationalistic. You would have seen it, and it's not that it doesn't exist today. A small issue happens between India and China, and our news channels start to show we have these many fighters, we have these many tanks. China has these many fighters, they have these many tanks, and then they will have this big animations in which the bomb will be dropped on the screen and this and that. So what are they suggesting? That India and China should go to war? And that is not something which the press should do. They should inform the people something has happened. They will now start to go into panel discussions on how we can win, how we cannot win. The press has not been like this. It's not that it's a characteristic right now. Since the First World War time, the press used to actually stoke fire into, or fuel into fire. Basically, if anybody wanted to compromise or have a conciliatory attitude, the press were like, our rulers or our leaders are impotent. They don't have the courage to fight these nations. So if anybody really wanted to compromise, the press used to mock them. And this is the same press, once the war will be over and 3 crore people will be dead, they will say, हमें क्या पता था कि इतना हो जाएगा. We didn't know that 3 crore people will be dead. We are the press. You were the state. You should have taken a better discussion or better decision. So the press made very bad nationalistic agenda forward, and governments could not embrace a conciliatory attitude, because the fact was that it was now shifting into public opinion that our state is a coward state. We are not ready to fight. No compromise. War is the solution for everything. Then comes rivalries, and this is a very important point. See, colonial rivalry was the reason why Germany got humiliated. Germany wanted colonies, it wanted to compete with Britain, and that is why it was looking for Morocco. So if Germany had never got actually in a way humiliated, then never would have the revenge feeling come through. So the fact is that the nations were getting embarrassed left, right and center, and therefore humiliation and sense of revenge was becoming bigger and bigger. But it's not just that. It's also economic rivalry. I can guarantee and say that if Germany would not have become a foremost industrial power, there was a very good chance that the British would never have touched the Germans. The collective jealousy of the British, French and the Russians made sure that the Germans responded in a certain way. And this is why I tell you that you should learn a life lesson from the First World War. That never be Germany of First World War or never be Germany of 1914. Whenever you will rise very quickly, there will be people who will be jealous. They will always wait for you to do one mistake. And Germany's mistake was that they responded irrationally, and for till 1992, from 1914 till 1992, this country will only see death, destruction and literal humiliation, only because of one decision. So when you will also rise very quickly, there will be multiple Britain, France and Russias who are waiting for you to do that one mistake, and they will literally destroy you. Germany could have avoided everything if they would not have irrationally attacked Russia or actually attacked France, which is basically miscalculations. Everybody was miscalculating. So this economic rivalry, that British jealousy towards the Germans, is going to come out properly when you will see the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles, or Versailles as it is called, the fact is the Treaty of Versailles was basically to humiliate Germany. So try to understand this point, that rivalries were at play. There was also one more rivalry, which is naval rivalry. See, at this point of time, British introduced a type of ship. These are called dreadnought ships, dreadnought class. These are British dreadnought class. Treaty of Versailles happens after the First World War, I will tell you that. The dreadnought class ships were the first, what we call as steel and iron ships. Before this, you had that Pirates of Caribbean type warships, which is that made out of wood and the weapons were in the hull. Here you have proper industrial grade steel and iron used with modern weaponry on the ships itself. These are called dreadnought ships. Because the British made the dreadnought ships, all ships before it became useless, and the Germans responded by developing the precursor to what we call today as submarines. These are called U-boats. Germans developed U-boats. U-boats are the precursor to just one generation before submarines. So this naval rivalry, which is instigated by the Industrial Revolution in that regard, was a very important reason why Britain and Germany were always at odds. And then when we talk about the causes, you have a series of miscalculations, multiple miscalculations. Rivalry between Serbia and Hungary is important. The Russian support to Serbia is also important. The German support to Austria is important because all of these supports were important for them to respond in a certain way. But then there is multiple miscalculation. Austria, Germany thought that Russia would not support Serbia. Germany thought that the war will not become a proper war across Europe. Germany and Russia did not think that mobilization would mean war. And Germany did not think that the British will actually, in a way, honor Belgium neutrality or Belgium as being a neutral country. The simple point is this is a capitalistic war. It's a power of industrial nations trying to figure out who is more dominant. Now, you can see everything is written in the PPT. When it comes to causes of the First World War, are you in a position to write it down in the examination, be it 150 or 250? Because then I want to discuss the war with you now. If this is clear, then we discuss the war. How did the war happen? Year by year, we will try to understand. I want everybody's yes. Because I have been doing this for now 7 hours, which is building up till this point to explain to you the causes of the First World War. Anyone else would have straight away come and say, this is this. I'm trying to explain why. So, causes of the First World War, everybody is capable of explaining it to yourself. And I would also encourage you to do one thing. Be it your family, be it your brother, sibling, dog, cat, whatever you have. Try to explain the First World War to them. And if they are also equally clear, then your task is done. Tell them the tendencies, talk to them about the events, and tell them the sequence of events. And you will, if you can explain to them, then my task is already done. If you have that much clarity, it is always harder to teach. It is easier to learn. So you learn and teach, and if you can teach to your parents or anyone, not to yourself, if you have nothing, then to your pillow, explain to it. The simple straightforward point is you need to explain it to someone, and it will help you in understanding it better. Now, let's talk about the war. Now, very good, Anu. Let's talk about the war year by year. Now, please pay attention. This discussion, nobody can write in 150, 250 words. But what I want from you is you just now sit back, relax, and listen to me. I'll give you a master timeline in the end of this class where everything I'm going to explain to you will be in one slide. You just need to wait and understand what I'm doing. So sit back, relax, and understand. Okay. Tendency miscalculations are causes. Yes. Okay. Now, you have Britain, France, Belgium, Russia, Germany, Austria, and then your Serbians. From which event to start writing cause? Start with Moroccan crisis. Everything you can tell them, don't have to go back till Serbian war. One second. Serbia. Now, we know that Austria attacked Serbia. We also know that Germany attacked Russia. We also know that Germany attacked France. and we also know that Britain attacked what we call as the Germans. Now, please remember one thing. These are called the yellow ones are called allied powers. They're called allied powers. They're allies, so allied powers. But don't call Germany and Austria Axis powers. Axis power is a word which is used only for Second World War. These are called the central powers. These are called the central power, and these are the allied powers. So please, for the context of the First World War, don't use the word Axis. Now, if you look at it, in the year 1914 itself, Germany has done a blunder. Germany has done a blunder, which is basically, it has created two fronts. It has created two fronts. The Eastern Front, logic behind the name Central, because Central Europe, Axis because then Italy and Germany were on the same axis longitudinally. Eastern Front, Western Front. Now, in war, is it good to have multiple fronts? Is it good to have multiple fronts? No. You have to now divide your army into two parts. If you look at it, Germany is the only country which is fighting on two fronts. Britain, France are fighting on their east. Russia is fighting on its west. It is only Germany which is fighting on east and west both. Now let's talk about both fronts separately. When we talk about the Western Front, as soon as Germany entered Belgium, Belgium was not ready for it. So the German advance into Belgium and into France was very quick. But as soon as Germany reached France, and they were like 30-35 kilometers away from Paris, Britain enters the war and sends its troops into France. And as soon as Britain enters, the Germans are pushed back. The Germans are pushed back. And very simply, the Germans are not able to make France surrender. And this front, the Western Front, will very quickly become what is called a stalemate. Within a month, it will become a stalemate. Stalemate means nobody can move forward or backward. As it is, the type of warfare which was happening is called trench warfare. Trench warfare is that you would have seen trenches are made in which people or the soldiers operate. So basically in trench warfare, you hold lines. So you hold line, 50 meters you go forward, 60 meters you go backwards. They hold basically certain lines, a whole trench line in that regard. So the stalemate meant that now they are holding lines on the Western Front. Nobody can really go forward, nobody can really go backward. So because France, Britain and Germany in that way are equal in their force, the Western Front became very quickly a front in which nobody was going to win. It's a draw at this point of time. When it comes to Russia and Germany, Austria, Russians were already mobilizing. So they were able to enter into Germany and Austria quickly, but the Germans were able to push back very hard. The Germans were able to push back very, very hard. And on the Eastern Front, what happens is that Austria from time to time loses to Russia, but Germany more or less has small victories against Russia. Now, can anybody tell me, was Russia gaining anything from this war? No. Remember this point for tomorrow, that basically it's a pointless war. They responded because of Serbia, but now Serbia is not involved only. So they were not doing anything. So on the Eastern Front, Germany is getting some success, but not any major breakthrough. And basically, this is the reason why the war started to prolong. Because whilst on the Western front, nobody could move nowhere, Germans were getting small victories over the Russians. Russians were, as it is, not very powerful when it comes to military power. So the Germans were always interested in the war because they were having certain success on the Eastern front, but not like reaching till Moscow. It's just that there are battles in which the Eastern front they are getting certain type of success, but Western front has become stalemate. Now very clearly you can see that this is not the way a war is fought. This is not the way a war is fought. Previously, wars were fought over the fact that you have a certain goal, you meet it and you end the war. Here it is not like that. It's like who will budge first. Nobody is ready to compromise at this point of time also. No ceasefire, nothing. Germany was ready to sit on the lines for years on, and France and Britain were also ready to do that. And Russia was the only reason why basically Germany was involved. So it's basically like Pakistan winning against Bangladesh and remaining interested in the World Cup. Certain small victories they can get. They can't defeat big powers or big countries. Small countries they're winning against. And they're just interested, we are winning something. We are still in between the table in that regard. So Western front is like that. They're not basically going to get any major success. They're just interested. They're involved in that sense. So why did it become stalemate? Why not allied powers of the West not attack? They are attacking. But it's not that you can see. It's not that it's not the Prithviraj Chauhan era that people will go into the Ranabhumi with horses and then going to fight. No, it is all concept of holding lines. Industrial power had made sure that bombs were used, armored cars were used, early tanks were used. Very different type of weaponry was there. It's not hand-to-hand combat that they're going to do. No. It's about machine guns holding certain lines. There is no man's land. It's one of the this is the first industrial war in the world. And it was not about basically going and doing what we call as jujitsu and type of hand-to-hand combat. No, it is properly holding lines, and trench warfare was very brutal on everyone. So 1914 itself, the fact is that this war is going to go long. But you can see that the initial basic moves, it was clear that on the Western front, nothing is going to happen. Eastern front is keeping Germany interested. Anybody has any issue in understanding 1914? Yes, Germany was a very powerful country that way. It can fight on two fronts in that sense, but they will be fatigued. Okay. Now comes the fateful year of 1915. And one of you asked me that if it is only Europe, then why are we talking about World War? You will see between 1915 and 17, it will become a bigger war. Now you have Britain, you have France, you have the Germany, you have Russia, and you have Austria. Serbia I have removed from the picture. Belgium don't matter. This now two powers will also now get involved. Now you see, Britain and France knew that Italy had a certain grievance with the Austrians, which is the Trino Triste area. So Britain and France, what they do is that they say to Italy, go take it, we will help you. You wanted Trino Triste, good time. What they wanted to do was to open a new front in the south. So Britain and France will encourage Italy, which was already an ally, it was an alliance partner of Germany, but betrayed the alliance partner, the alliance in that regard, and Italy attacked Austria and created a new front, the southern front. So when it was clear that the eastern on the western front nothing is going to happen, the British and the French are now what is called mushrooming the war, which is it is spreading. So Britain and France will ask Italy to fight with Austria to take Trinotrist, and they will also give very big fundas to Italy. We will give you islands, we will give you a lot of things, fight for us. And Italy falls for that. Now Germany needed to do something. Germany needed to do something because the Russians had the access to the Mediterranean and they could strengthen the southern front. So what the Germans will do is that they will go and talk to the Ottomans. And they will say, if we remember well, I think you hate the Russians. The Ottomans will say yes. And the Germans will now ask the Ottomans to join in the war effort. And the Ottomans were given only one task, which they did very, very well. Their task was to block and attack the navy movement of Russia in Black Sea. If you remember, who controlled the Dardanelles Strait and the Bosphorus Strait? Who controlled it? The Ottomans. And therefore, the Ottomans were given just one task, ease the southern front for us. So the year of 1915, basically two things are happening. Italy joins the war and the Ottomans join the war. Ottomans late 1914-15, again Italy late 1914-15. So the war started like this. And now you can see two major powers involved. Ottomans are good for nothing other than this. They are of no purpose to the Germans. They can only do one thing very, very well, which is guard the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles Strait well. Anybody has any issue in 1915? I'll give you one master mind map. It will help you in revising everything well. Don't worry about that. Once, let me complete the story. Okay, now 1915 proved that territorial warfare was not going to go anywhere, and naval power is important. Why did Serbia, where did Serbia go? Serbia was now not even in the picture. Serbia, too small a power to be involved. Why Italy attacked Austria? Because Italy wanted Trinotrist area of Austria, and the British and the French promised a lot of areas out of these areas once they basically are defeated, which basically Italy will not even get. Now comes the year of 1916. This is a very interesting period, a very interesting period. You have the war will now shift to the seas. You have Britain, France, Italy, Russia, and you have Germany. They're not snakes, they are waves. अरे imagination तो देखो यार. Germany, Austria, Ottomans. Now, there are two more powers which are going to get involved. Now, see, what is the ocean between Britain and USA? Yes, this would be the Atlantic. This area is the Atlantic. This is the Pacific. This is the Pacific. Pacific, Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and that is what is basically it is showing. Now please try to understand. Nobody is going nowhere in frontal warfare. One thing is very, very clear. Nobody is going nowhere on the land. Nobody is going nowhere. So now the British will change their tactic. The British will change their tactic. They now shift to the seas. And the British tactic was suffocate the Germans. Suffocate the Central Powers, because if their supply from the north and the south is suffocated or is taken away, then they will automatically lose the war. So what the British first do is that they send a message to the Japanese, who had now become an industrial nation in the Asian sector, that there are certain colonies. These are called the German Pacific colonies, and the task which basically Japan is given is that take the German Pacific colonies. Take the German Pacific colonies. Germany was getting supplies from the Pacific colonies. Germany was getting supplies from the Pacific colonies. So the Japanese were given the task that you take these German Pacific colonies and basically suffocate the Germans. So the first thing which happens, which is Japan seizes the German Pacific colonies. Now, Germany, in a way, now starts to feel suffocated. So now what it does is, it tries to target the supplier of the British and the French. And at this point of time, the most important supplier, it was the foremost supplier of the Allied powers. The US did not enter the war. What did Japan get by doing this? You tell me. India tells Rwanda, go and attack Nigeria. Will Rwanda do it or not? A big power is telling you to do something. Why would you not do it? Japan, no one cared. Here is Britain, the foremost British Empire, telling you to take Pacific colonies. You will do what the British will say. Geopolitics. So the US had not entered the war, not part of the war. Rather, what it was doing was that it was really happy in supplying to the British, the French. So the ships, they were merchant ships, which is to supply food, guns, ammunition, and everything. Small to big, everything the Americans were ready to supply. Americans were profiteering from the war, and basically they were happy to do it. However, now Germany wants to retaliate. So in retaliation for suffocation, now Germans start what is called the U-boat campaign. U-boat campaign is that the Germans start to attack neutral supply ships. And in this, what happens is that the Americans lose two very big ships. One is called Lusitania and the other one was called Sussex. These are two very, very big ships which they had. And in this, they were also losing civilians. So U-boat campaign, the Germans now started to target ships, neutral ships, American ships. And on this, maybe in Lusitania, there were 1,200 soldiers, but 500 civilians were also there. And now the American public opinion started to change. American public opinion started to change, which is that how can we let our civilians die? But still, the Americans were not ready to enter the war. Woodrow Wilson, who was the president at this point of time, he said it's not worth it. Let's profiteer from the war. But one major revelation in late 1916 and the first 3 months of 1917 is going to change everything. So whilst they are losing their civilians, that is okay. Germany thought that the strength of the Allies were the Americans. And the Americans were enjoying this war because they were across the Atlantic. So very simply, the Germans thought that if we can somehow take the war to the American continent, now maza aana band ho jayega. That you are enjoying the war, everybody, their ammunition, food, merchant ships. They said, let's do one thing. Let's spill over the war into America. And the German foreign minister at this point of time was a person called, and this you would have done in your what we call as modern India also, is a person called Zimmermann. Zimmermann sent a telegraph to a country here, which you also know today as Mexico. Zimmermann sent a telegraph to Mexico, and the Mexican dictator Zimmermann said that I will give you money, I will give you the arms, I'll give you the ammunition. Go and attack America from its southern border. Basically attack Texas. And this is called the Zimmermann plan. The Germans wanted to very simply attack, wanted to encourage the Mexicans to fight against the Americans. So by the fateful year of 1917, the Americans still had not entered the war in January of 1917. You have the British, you have the French, you have the Italians, you have the Russians, and thereafter you have Germany, Austria, and Ottomans. The angle related to Mexico comes in. So there is the Zimmermann correspondence. The British wanted the Americans to enter the war. So the British will intercept this telegraph and tell it to the US. Now the US, based on first civilian people dying, changing public opinion, and third, Zimmermann plan, they will choose to enter the war in April of 1917. So in April 1917, America enters the war. Japan has done what it needed to do. Japan's task has been complete. Japan's task is complete. It is holding the colonies. But in December of 1917, Russia will exit the war. After Russian Revolution, which we have to do tomorrow. After the Russian Revolution. Did Mexico really attack? No, it was just a telegraph. Even before Mexico could do something, even it could do something before that, America responded. And very simply, in 1917, America enters, Russia exits. We will discuss why it will exit, but Russia exits. And once the Americans enter, 1918 was more or less, it was clear that the USA, the British, the French, along with the Italians versus the Germans, the Austrians and the Ottomans. There was no way with the new, fresh army, navy and resource base. The Germans will try to push forward, but in the year of 1918, Allied powers will win, and all of these powers will be made to sign the Treaty of Versailles after German surrender. So as soon as America entered, there was no way that Germans were fighting for now 4 years. America had new resources. They were very quickly able to enter. Ottomans will sign a different treaty, which is Treaty of Sevres, because of which we have the Khilafat issue. And the simple straightforward point is Treaty of Versailles we will discuss after I give you the mind map, because it will become one of the foremost reasons for the Second World War to happen. But basically, we started at a war where Western Front and Eastern Front, they were fighting. Western Front becomes stalemate. Eastern Front will become the place where Germans will keep on being interested, trench warfare. Then 1915, Italy and Ottomans will enter. And thereafter, they will fight from both sides. Thereafter, 1916, the war will shift towards the seas itself. It will become a naval warfare. 1916, America was being attacked. American ships were attacked by Germans. Once Japan, on the request of Britain, is going to seize the German colonies in the Pacific, and therefore it will now become a supplies warfare. Who will have more supplies? Who can control supplies? Americans were not still entering, or were not convinced to enter the war still. However, once Lusitania, Sussex will be sunk, there will be a change in public opinion. And once the Zimmermann plan is revealed, America will enter the war in April of 1917. At the same point of time, Russia will exit the war in December of 1917 after the Russian Revolution. And by 1918, Germany was not in a position to fight, and Germany will sign the armistice, what we call as the concept of ceasefire, and the Treaty of Versailles will be signed. Done. Can I give you the master timeline? If all of this makes sense, I'll read it out to you from the PPT, and then we can, why Ottomans had joined on the request of the Germans. Did this make sense to you? And you can now realize that you can't write all of this in 250 words. So if this is clear, I want to read the story out to you. Then I want to give you the mind map, and then I want to discuss the Treaty of Versailles with you, which is much more important to us. Okay, now 1914 Western Front, German advanced into France through Belgium. Germany was stuck. This is the fourth revision we are doing of the same thing. Germany was stuck in Belgium due to strong resistance. United Kingdom joined when the neutrality was diluted. And sir, we can not relevant. If yes, it is not relevant. You have to write 250 words. So if you can know this story, but writing in the exam is not possible. Germany was unable to capture the English Channel and ports. At the Battle of Marne, French pushed back the Germans, and the Western Front will now become a stalemate. On the other hand, Russia mobilized quicker than expected. Russia invaded Austria and Germany together. Germans drove out Russians out of the German territory itself, invaded Russia. This gave us self-confidence and self-boost to the Germans. Turkey will enter late 1915 basically. and Italy will enter also late 1415. Germany was now fighting on two fronts. Eastern front they had some success. 1915 is the year in which Italy will also join. Stalemate on the Western Front. Russia had some success against Austria but were defeated by the Germans. Turkey will now block the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles Strait. And now Turkey was fighting, or Ottomans were fighting on the part of the Central Powers, and Italy was fighting on the part of the Allied Powers. Simply, this is how it now started to become bigger and bigger, slowly but surely. Thereafter, the importance, yes, Palak, more than enough, know the powers which are involved. The importance of navy will become important. By 1916 it was about naval forces, blockade the central powers, keep your own sea routes open, block theirs. Central forces were not able to use the navy well. As it is, Ottomans don't have a navy, Austria also does not have a very powerful navy. Allied forces searched neutral ships, confiscated doubtful goods. Germans retaliated by submarine attacks and mines, unrestricted submarine warfare or U-boat campaign. Central Power started attacking even neutral ships. British adopted the convoy system, but the U-boat campaign brought in the US into the war itself. In April 1917, after large-scale investment in the US, the Americans needed the allies to survive so that they can get their investment back. Trading relationship was also there. US gave huge loans to the Allied powers. After the US citizens were lost in Lusitania and Sussex, public opinion changed, and Zimmermann Plan was found. The Americans entered in April of 1917, and December of 1917, Russia will exit the war after the Russian Revolution. Thereafter, 1918, German offensive will fail. Counteroffensive will start in August. By November, they had signed the armistice. Germany had lost the war. The reason why they had lost the war is very straightforward. War on two fronts is never good. Allied powers were very powerful. Germany had useless allies also. The failure of the German U-boat campaign, Americans entering the war basically made it sure that the Germans lose. And the Spanish flu, COVID-19 like flu was spreading across the Central European sector and in the Mediterranean sector that will kill more German soldiers than actually the people or the allies in that regard. And very simply, Germany was losing really badly and was led down by its allies also. Austria and Ottomans are useless when it comes to power and fighting. It was only the Germans who had the capability of fighting in that regard. How does World War I impact India? Because if Indians are part of the colonial structure, most of the regiments which fought with the Ottomans in the Central Asian sector were Indian regiments. And therefore, Indians were involved in the form of Sikhs sending a lot of soldiers to the First World War or the World War I effort in that regard. That is the reason for the what we call as Amritsar violence, which is going to lead to Jallianwala Bagh. Rowlatt Act was seen as a betrayal of the Sikh effort in supporting the First World War. That's a separate issue altogether. Okay. Why Russia exits the war? Wait for 24 hours. You will know by tomorrow. Okay. Now, let me give you a master mind map. Can I do that? Okay. They encouraged Italy to attack Austria. Okay. Now, okay. Okay. Now every color indicates a year. Indicates a year. Okay. Now Austria attacks Serbia. Russia mobilizes army. Germany attacks Russia. Germany attacks France via Belgium. Britain attacks Germany. Now, Italy attacks Austria. On request of Britain and France. Ottomans attack Russia in Black Sea and join Central Powers. Thereafter, 1916, Japan seizes the Pacific colonies of Germany and main supplier of allies. Launches U-boat campaign against USA. 1917, Zimmerman Plan. America enters the war. Russia exits the war and 9, 11, 12, 13. Germany surrenders. Done. This is basically everything about the First World War in one slide. Make sense? So you can't make this in the examination, obviously, but you can use it to revise and very quickly go over the basic ideas. So everything which I taught you in the past 1.5 hours is on this slide. Anybody has any issue right now, tell me. If not, then I talk about the Treaty of Versailles and the impact of the war. If Austria was much influential power to the First World War, as it did not give it to Serbia by convincing major Western powers, and it could have given access to sea to Serbia, control trade. Again, Dinesh, your hypothetical question. Sure, why not? But if you have the power to stop someone, then why would you give that person that power? So you are talking about Serbia. Austria will go to the headache of giving Serbia access and then controlling Serbia. It's not. You can't do it right now. How will you do it in 1900s? Japan entered to request of whom? Check, Ilma, the connection between Japan and Britain is there. So Britain. Why Germany surrendered? Does America attack Germany? America does attack Germany. Germany had no other option but to surrender. Alsace-Lorraine was occupied by Bismarck in the war against France. How can then French fortify Alsace-Lorraine? Vikram, bhavna ko samajh. The point is Alsace-Lorraine sector, which is the area next to Alsace-Lorraine, which is the international border between Germany and France. Why draw blue line in Britain and Japanese? Japanese did capture the Pacific colonies on the request of the British. What was the concept of Western Eastern Front? Like direction, west. So Western Front, east, Eastern Front. Sir, first thing, was Serbia killed Austria king and queen? Yes, but I am not writing that. Zimmerman plan is trying to convince Mexico to attack America, which did not happen. Why Italy is 0.5, Britain is also 0.5. ठीक है यार, लो change कर दिया. I have to change this, then this. 4. This is 5, 6, 7. Where is 8? 8, 7, 8. Then there is to be 2. Now this is why I did not want to touch it. So 7, 6, 7. There is one more 6. So this becomes 8. Then this becomes 9. So 9 becomes 10. 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. 10. 10 becomes 11. 10, 10, 10, 10. 9, 10, 10. Where is 11? 11, 11, 10, 11, 12. America enters 13. Maza aaya? Now don't later tell me that the numbering is this. Yes, I did not. I repeated the number. Either pointed that point of time. Later, don't give me this lesson that the numbering is wrong, because then I have to overwrite. What type of question can be asked? Say causes of the French, causes of the First World War, not this. How is First World War and Jallianwala Bagh connected? Anshu, have you done modern India? Have you done modern India? Anshu. So if you've done modern India, still you don't know connection between World War I and Jallianwala Bagh. Do you know about something called Amritsar violence? Perfect, Nandeshwar. What is Amritsar violence? Which date did it happen? Anshu. What is called Amritsar violence? Not 6th April, not 14th April. 13th April is Jallianwala Bagh. Has to happen between 6th and 14th. सब एक एक करके एक डेट बोल दो. One. Not 11th. Shavik, perfect. There's something called Amritsar violence which happened on 10th April. wherein there was prop Marcella Sherwood. Yes, Marcella Sherwood, Abhishek, very good. Marcella Sherwood is going to get beaten up. 5 Europeans will be killed. 10th, 11th of April, Amritsar violence will happen. None, she did not die, but basically she was beaten up. So Jallianwala Bagh, Amritsar violence. Why was there violence in Amritsar? Why was Punjab so angry with the Rowlatt Act? Anshu, you've asked the question, but you're not answering me. Why is that Punjab was so angry with the Rowlatt Act? You know Saifuddin Kichlev and Satyapal's expectation, that incident also. But Amritsar had a lot of internal anger over the fact that they thought that they will be rewarded after the First World War for helping the British win the First World War. But what they got was Rowlatt Act. So in Amritsar, in Punjab, there was a lot of violence which happens because of the fact that there was an inert or inherent reward they were expecting, and for they get what is their leaders getting picked up under Rowlatt Act. That is why Amritsar violence will be then trumped by, or what we call as Dyer basically took revenge for Amritsar violence on 13th. But the point is, I can't give you more context for that. I have to go back to Defense of India Act 1915, discuss modern India with you, everything again. The fact is, Jallianwala Bagh was linked to Defense of India Act 1915 itself. Rowlatt Act, or what we call as Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act, is nothing but the extension of Defense of India Act from 1915 to thereafter forward. Gandhi gets launched as for the first time at the All India level, but 6th April is very successful. Amritsar, everything goes bad. 13th April, Jallianwala Bagh happens. 14th, 15th, 18th April, he will withdraw the movement itself. But I presume these things. That you know these things, because if you say that you've done it, then that's a separate issue altogether. So when you did do modern India, you should have had this conversation. And I hope you did have. Can we now talk about Treaty of Versailles or the impact of the First World War? Zimmerman plan is not linked to the Ghadar movement, but yes, tangentially in a way. Ghadar movement was becoming a nuisance over the concept of Zimmerman plan, and Defense of India Act was for the Ghadar movement itself. Yes, Anshu, the government passed Rowlatt Act, gave power to police to arrest. But this is the whole concept. You're giving me standard thing. What is Rowlatt Act? I'm discussing something which is related to it in the larger context. This is why I tell you, without world history, you'll never understand modern India. If you have done modern India without talking about the First World War, the discussion with regards to Defense of India Act, then it's an incomplete story. That's the basic point. Okay. Amlesh, that is a question which you can expect at the school level. If UPSC is asking that question, very easy. That what is the importance of naval power in First World War? But they will not. See, the UPSC is not to test First World War in the internals. Significance is more important, which we are coming to. Okay. Now, see, the mind map is to teach you how to make notes. See, what I did was I summarized 1.5 hours into one slide. If you'll be able to do that for yourself, that is how you make better notes. Because I've seen students make notes which are equally as big as the book itself. Book is 200 pages, notes is 150 pages. Then what's the point of the notes itself? Rather read the 50 pages and read the book only. It's about creating a certain way of pushing things together. Okay. Now, when we talk about the First World War, the First World War was an unprecedented war. Not called the First World War at this point of time, called the Great War. Later, when the Second World War will happen, they will call it the First World War. This war was never expected in Europe. The scale, the level of death and destruction was unparalleled. In the way that it started in the European sector only. But by 1918, the whole world was involved because most of these powers were also colonial powers. So if Britain gets involved, India gets involved. If France gets involved, Indochina gets involved, Vietnam sector gets involved. Germany, German colonies get involved. All of these countries were holding certain amount of colonies in Africa and in Asia, and therefore this World War word is used because it is at the end of the day the world fighting, because it is a connected world of colonialism. But a question which can be asked in the examination is, what are the characteristics of this war? And there are four major characteristics which you need to understand. First and second are connected to each other, which is that for the first time, war became a social effort also. See, previously, wars were the task of a certain class or strata of the society. Knights will fight, the Kshatriyas will fight, the soldiers will fight, the samurais will fight, the warriors will fight. Civilian population was not involved. And previously there was also a war ethic, which is that you kill a soldier, that is glory, but you don't kill an unarmed civilian. However, the type of nationalism which had actually developed by this point of time was that if I'm killing a Britisher, I'm doing national service. It can be a British soldier or British civilian. So the line between soldier and civilian was now gone. So if I drop a bomb on London and I killed 10 lakh people who had nothing to do with this war or had nothing to do with the decision to go to war, I have done national service. So basically killing humans was the task of the soldier now, and the states were ready to go to any length to kill anyone. This was never the case, and this is basically capitalism changing the way we fight wars. This is the industrial revolution changing the way we fight wars. You have such big weaponry, what will you do with it? So weapons which are made for mass destruction are now basically there. Killing a citizen is basically killing or doing service to nation. And because this war takes control, people are going to go for what we call as conscription. Once you reach 18 years, you have to go and fight in the war. The women then have to enter into the workspace. So what happens is that in Europe, total control over society. Every strata of the society is involved in making something or doing something. So the Industrial Revolution had changed the war, and the characteristics now exhibit it, which is total control over society and blurring of the soldier and civilian line. But the third point is also related to this, which is mobilization of resources, which had never ever happened across the world, which is that from nations now put in all production capacity towards fighting war. War was not the effort of the army, it was the effort of the nation. So you produce weapons at astonishing rates. Lakhs of ammunitions were made within hours in all of these countries, every day. New technologies were not developed for the betterment of the people. They will get application later. It was to basically help in the war effort. And the fact of the matter is, the only strata which actually profited from this war were the Americans and the industrialists. I'll take certain names in front of you and you will tell me the connection of these names. Boeing, Rolls-Royce, BMW, Mercedes, Dior, Gucci, Hugo Boss, and Porsche, Mercedes, refrigerated Mercedes. What is the connection between all of these companies? No, they're not all German manufacturers. Rolls-Royce and Boeing, and these are British manufacturers. I'll tell you the connection between all of them. The connection between all of them were that they were the brands which profited during the Second World War. All British Spitfire aircrafts were made by Rolls-Royce and Boeing together. Rather, not Boeing, Bentley, sorry. Bentley and Rolls-Royce. Hitler's cars were Mercedes. Hitler's trucks were BMW. Hitler's plane engines were made by Porsche. Mussolini's uniform was made by Hugo Boss. Dior used to make the belts along with Gucci for Mussolini. All of these companies, which today are such big brands, most of them are fascist companies. They supported Hitler and Mussolini, except for the British ones. They were the ones who profiteered. Only the capitalist class profiteers, because war increases demand artificially. There's an artificial increase in demand. And we will see what is the impact of artificial increase, which is called the Great Depression by Friday. But the point what I'm trying to argue here is, no one benefits from the war like First World War. And last but not the least is the most important characteristic of this war was, which we already had seen, nobody was ready to compromise. No one. They were ready to go to any lengths to destroy each other. No one was ready to compromise. They will do anything and everything, but they will not compromise. This is unprecedented, which we had never seen. 4 characteristics, understand them, then I will discuss with you the impact of the war one by one. Yes? Yes, okay. Now, this is the list of casualties as per country. And you see we talk and we joke about Third World War. We joke about wars. This is a mains-oriented topic. This whole subject is mains-oriented. Palak, where are you? Plain Express took over all society. Every part of the society was contributing to the war. That is the point. Now, in Russia, 12 million, meaning 1.2 crore, people were mobilized. Mobilized meaning they became part of the war. And out of them, 9 million died. 9 million died. 90 lakh people died in Russia because of this war. Germany, 1.1 crore people mobilized, 7 million dead. People, 70 lakh people dead. This is not the soldiers, people. Great Britain, 70 million involved, 30 lakh dead. France, 80 lakh involved, 60 lakh dead. Austria, close to 80 million or 8 million, which is 80 lakh involved, 70 lakh dead. When you go through this chart, you will realize that the total number of people dead in this war touches 3 crore. 3 crore people died because of the Serbians' obsession with Bosnia, and because people were not ready to compromise. Political decisions instigated by industrialists was the way the whole subcontinent got depopulated. The point is that war has cost. Serbia till today does not have Bosnia. Serbia today is a landlocked country. The fact of the matter is, war has cost. And this is the cost of the war. Most of them were unsuspecting, unarmed civilians who paid the price of nationalism. And these are the people who talk about white man's burden and barbarianism. They used to call us savages and barbarians. These people will kill within 50 years, first 50 years of 1950, 1900 to 1950, they will kill 11 crore people over egos. Don't have to remember this data. Try to understand the scale. The point which I'm trying to argue here is that there is a social impact. The social impact. The official number which the British give is 8.5 million, 85 lakh dead. But if you go to any historical museum, they will quote 30 million. There was one whole generation which died in the war, which is called the war generation. Further, people became atheists, saying that if there is God, then why is there war? People gave up on the concept of religion. There was a whole reconstruction of Europe which now needed to start. If you look at the economic impact of the war, there was only one country which you can see in skin color. There's only one country which actually profited and got something out of this war. Every other country saw a decline, be it population, major depopulation in the British, French and the German Italian sector. The population of America will go up. The GDP of America basically went from 10 to 15% increase was there. Debt increased exponentially. Inflation 300% in Germany. And industrial growth, except for Italy and the US, nowhere else there was industrial growth. The total cost of destruction of the First World War was $400 billion. $400 billion worth of equipment, infrastructure was destroyed. The share of America in world trade increased by 10% because no other country was in a position to trade. The impact of the First World War is also related to the Great Depression, which I will discuss with you on Friday. But neither does the economic cost or neither does the what we call a social cost actually justify the level of destruction which happened. But the biggest consequence was a new map of Europe, which was created by the Treaty of Versailles. I'm going to discuss the Treaty of Versailles with you when we will close for today. This map is important because this is going to be important to understand how Hitler came to existence and how he rose to power. But politically also, Germany and Russia had their own revolutions. New balance of power, USA emerged as a very important power. But the rise of fascism, which is Hitler, Mussolini, and the rise of socialism, all were related to the First World War, which we'll again discuss. Tomorrow we discuss socialism, communism, Marxism, what it is. 3 crore casualty of civilian and soldier together. Now, before we end for today, I want to discuss this treaty with you. Can I do that? Can I do that? Everything else is written in the PPT. You put them in points in the examination, you will get the answer. I want to discuss the Treaty of Versailles. Now, when we talk about the Treaty of Versailles, single-handedly, no doubt at all, worst treaty of the world. It created the context Second World War. It was the reason for Second World War. It made Central Europe unstable, and Hitler actively wanted to destroy it, destroy the provisions. Now the point was that if it's such a big problem, what was there in the treaty? See, the Treaty of Versailles, which was signed at the Palace of Versailles itself, the biggest peculiarity was Germany was not called. Russia was not called. Rather, this treaty was done between Britain, France and America together, and they asked the Germans to sign it. So the Germans never got a chance to give their explanation. The real culprit of the war, Serbia, was not punished. Rather, the clauses which were there in the Treaty of Versailles were to basically punish Germany. Now, the jealousy of the British and the French will come out. The first was that Russia lost a lot of its territory, which I will tell you tomorrow why. Because the Americans and the British did not like what had happened in Russia with the rise of Lenin, which we'll discuss. Germany will lose a lot of its territory. Austro-Hungarian Empire will be totally destroyed and basically made into 3 to 4 different countries. You will see Austria was divided into Austria, Hungary, Transylvania, Czechoslovakia, Galicia. Germany lost all of this territory to create Poland. Russia lost Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. And basically Germany was made a very small country in that sense. But the bigger problem with Treaty of Versailles was not that Germany lost its territory. They said Germany can only have 1 lakh people in the army. They cannot have a proper air force. They can only have 6 battleships, totally demilitarized Germany. But the worst clause of the what we call as the Treaty of Versailles was the war guilt clause. Who was guilty of war? Can we say Germany was 100% guilty of the war? No. But they pinned all of the guilt on Germany, that Germany was a single-handed reason why the war happened. But more than that, they had what is called a war reparation clause. War reparation is that because you fought with us and you destroyed a lot of things, Germany was asked to pay 6,600 million pounds to the victors. Basically, France said that let us destroy Germany totally so that never will the Germans ever rise and become something. Britain said that if you are going to do that, then who will pay us for the war? So the French idea was cut the hands and leg of the Germans so that they become basically useless. Britain said, don't do that, only break the legs and hands so that at least they can beg for us and give us some money. War reparation clause, 6,600 million pounds was the amount decided which Germany was going to pay to Britain, France and America for fighting the war. Serbia was punished by just basically clubbing that whole Balkan sector into the kingdom of Serb and Croats, which will later become Yugoslavia. But the point is, if you look at the provisions, the Paris Peace Conference, it later is going to become the single-handed reason why violence will again come up. Signed on 28 June 1919. Germans were not allowed to present their case itself. Why? How will the Germans? Why did Germans accept it? Germans were not even shown the treaty. They were asked to sign on a document. That's it. They were not even allowed to give their case for what had happened. And what will happen is Alsace-Lorraine, France will get that they were dying to do for now the past 50 to 60 years. Alsace-Lorraine, France will get. Small area will be given to Denmark. Prussia will be basically given to Poland. Saar region will be everybody's cake to eat. Saar region is one of the most fertile areas and resource-rich areas of Germany. Belgium, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia were created. Germans can't have more than 1 lakh army. No aircraft, no submarines, only 6 battleships. The Austrians and Germans cannot come together ever. No forms of Anschluss, which is these 2 German-speaking territories coming together. But the worst treaty clause was this. War guilt clause, everything put on the Germans. Amount fixed was 6,600 million pounds to be paid after 1921. And this was to be paid to the victor countries. This was also the treaty which created the League of Nations, the most useless organization ever to exist in the world. It was there to basically prevent a war, but it is the basically the best example of how collective security organizations are useless. Caesar is the name of the constitutional monarchy king of Germany. Caesar is the position taken. Caesar. Now, before we end for today, I want to just show you this map, because this map holds the key to the Second World War. Now, I'm basically now transitioning away from the First World War. I've discussed the cause with you, First World War, the significance, the impact, and the course. Anybody has any issue here? Anybody has any issue in this? You have to say yes or no right now, because then First World War for me is over. Is there any issue? Yes or no? If you are saying no, basically I want to hear a no, not a yes. The basic point is there is no issue. Everything is clear. Perfect. Now, I have already, significance I told you is nothing but the Great Depression, the Second World War. Significance is an ongoing thing which I will keep on telling you. Treaty of Versailles is one significance. The economic and social impact is the other significance impact concept. League of Nations was replaced by, yes, the UN, another useless organization. Yes. So the four characteristics are also, no, they are characteristics. That is a separate issue altogether. Now, pay attention. Russia was an ally. Why did they were not invited? Abhishek, that answer you will get tomorrow. Why was Russia basically punished for leaving the war, which I will tell you. Understand this point, that Germany was made much smaller than what it was. Austrian-Hungarian Empire was created with Czechoslovakia, Austria, Hungary, Transylvania, Galicia. Serbia, if you remember, was somewhere here. This whole sector will now be called the Kingdom of Slovenes, Croats and Serbs, and later one dictator will capture this power and call it Yugoslavia. And Poland for the first time will become a proper country. Half of it will come out of Germany, half of it will be given by the USSR, and Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Finland were created as new countries. This I will tell you why this happened to the USSR tomorrow. The most important point I want to argue is that the problem with this map is none of the territories were properly defined. So there was a territorial dispute amongst most of these countries. But most of these countries were made into democracies with zero to no experience of democracy. And the second most important characteristic, now you will tell me if this is a good combination or not. They were ethnically diverse. Rather than giving power to majority, minorities were given power. And they are democracies. Is this a good combination? This is a recipe for disaster. First, to be very ethnically diverse, rather than giving power to the majority, you give it to the minority. And they are democracies, so therefore there is a lot of fragility in it. This point you just have to remember for me for one day, because on Friday when we come back to the story, we will talk about the reasons for the Second World War to happen. Treaty of Versailles is one. But the second one is the fragile democracies of Central Europe. We will discuss the Great Depression, and then we'll discuss rise of Hitler and Mussolini, which is fascism. And the Second World War will start because of whatever happened at this point of time. So if you understand all of this, and if this basic mind map makes sense to you, then I will break for today, and we will meet on at same time tomorrow, 6 a.m. Done? This is the gist of the class in that sense. Yes? Done. Okay. So if you don't have a question, you can leave the session now. Thank you so much. I will see you tomorrow, same time, 6 a.m. Thank you.